two.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. You know, I love talking to authors because they have the courage to take their thoughts, their stories, their lessons, put it in a book and share it with the many, ultimately changing their legacy and destiny in the process. And if you're an entrepreneur out there, I highly recommend you write a book. It will give you clarity, self-awareness, but opportunity. If you need help with any of that, check out dreamstarterspublishing.com. And if you have a book that's already done, you want to generate leads with it, check out bookmarketingcrm.com. Turn your book into courses and masterminds and just automation. It'll be a game changer. Anyways, the book that we're talking about today is perfect for those people who maybe want to know themselves and, maybe put themselves out there on social media and be tested in a way that, you really want to live as if you are a brand. I think we all have a brand, and it's what they say about you when you're not in the room. So if you want to stay on brand, this podcast episode is for you. The book is called On Brand: Shape Your Narrative, Share Your Vision, Shift Their Perception. And we have the author with us today. It is Aliza. Is it Light? Is that how I say the last name?
Aliza Licht.
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 Okay.
Like
Aliza
licked a
Licht.
lollipop. Yeah.
All righty. That's one to remember, and it's very easy to remember. So thank you so much for being here. This is your second book, so it's an honor to talk with you.
Oh, Mike, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, you are a branding person. You have another book called Leave Your Mark, all the philosophies that I believe in quite wholeheartedly. So let's start off with the genesis of this book. What made you want to write it? And if you can give our listeners and viewers maybe the recap of where you come from and what made you fall in love with this pathway that you're on.
Well, it's so funny, Mike, because I don't think that anyone really has a clue what pathway they're on. I mean, quite frankly, I was pre-med in college. I graduated with neurobiology and physiology and ended up in a fashion career. So really the long story short is my role was corporate public relations in fashion at Donna Karan for many, many years. And in 2009, we were embarking on this, wait for it, newish channel called Twitter, whereby we were trying to think of like how we would be on Twitter. And the conundrum was really Donna Karan was a person and a brand, right? So it's like, how do you separate that? As a publicist, I felt it was a risk to think about, well, who's going to write that copy? And people will assume it's her. So I came up with this anonymous character idea inspired by Gossip Girl called DKNY PR Girl, which essentially was one of the first examples of what we call a fashion influencer back then. And I was that character anonymously for 2 years, and then ultimately for 6 years, came out as that person. Now, why is this relevant to On Brand? In Leave Your Mark, which is a book that came about because of this character, I came up with something called last name syndrome. And what it means to suffer from last name syndrome is when, and we all do it, where you take off your last name when you work for a credible company and you become first name from that company. So I was Aliza from DKNY. I worked with Virginia at Vogue. You can think of John from Goldman Sachs, like wherever people work, where they're leveraging the brand that they work for, it becomes their last name.
Wow.
But what happens when you leave the company? Then what?
Identity shift.
Identity crisis.
Yeah,
right?
show your crisis. Good point.
Okay,
Yeah.
Identity crisis. So On Brand really starts out with my personal story of like, wow, the first day that I left this company after 17 years and being this very world famous character, when I came out as this person behind the Twitter handle, it generated 230 million media impressions. It was a big deal. But then on that first Monday of like nothing, where I don't have a title, I'm not this character anymore, I don't work for LVMH, who am I now? So On Brand is all about building equity in your own name, not just where you work.
Oh, that's good. And I'm looking at the summary. You have a couple great sentences I just want to read off here. It says, when you give meaning to your own name, it secures your professional longevity. If you don't do the work to communicate your value, other people will happily make up their own version of your story, or worse, forget about you. When your personal brand is strong, your name is dropped in rooms you're not in, and opportunities open up to you first. In a world where we communicate nonstop, learning how to market yourself and articulating the message you want to send are paramount to success. I think a lot of people struggle with this, maybe because they don't know where they're going. They don't know what they stand for. Maybe they have no self-awareness and they're kind of figuring it out as they go. And as they do that, they have this imposter syndrome. Well, I'm not this person yet, so I'm not going to post on social media. I'm not going to try to get that speaking gig because I'm not prepared yet. And all they're doing is limiting their chances of the world, kind of making it easy on them for them to be found. Am I right? Is that really, does that summarize the struggle for the average person?
You summarized it perfectly, but I'll add to that, Mike, which is it's really uncomfortable work. It's uncomfortable to position yourself and talk about yourself and to shape that narrative. But if you don't do it, if you're waiting around for someone to notice you're good at what you do, that's not a strategy.
Yeah. Waiting is not a strategy.
It's
It's a
not.
it's a clever way of saying it. And the fact of if you don't believe it, how the hell is somebody else going to believe it? That you're the one, right?
Well, as a former publicist, it's like I think of it as arming the people in your network to be able to speak about you when you're not there. That's really if you don't tell people, people assume that everybody knows what they're doing or they're trying to do. But I bring in a lot of experts in on brand, and Dory Clark is my communications expert, and she says it very perfectly. No one is thinking about you. Literally no one. And people assume that they are, but they're not.
Hmm.
So you have to be proactive, and I believe you have to repeat your message in new and interesting ways. Repetition is reputation, and we all feel weird doing it, but it's a necessary evil. But I have a rule though, Mike, which is for every one time that you're like sharing a win or talking about yourself, proactively go out and amplify 5 other people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, everybody's worried about the outcome, the reaction, but the laws of physics need to be applied. Every action has a reaction. And start worrying
Yeah.
about what you're putting in, what you're saying about others, or what are you commenting on other people. If you want interaction and engagement on your own posts, start liking and sharing and promoting others. My God, is that just a great takeaway in life? So worry about what you can give rather than what you receive. And therefore, you might not ever have to worry about what you receive, because if you give so much, the spillover is going to be inevitable.
That is absolutely true. And also, it will ensure that people don't hate you.
Yeah. You mean as in you're not just a taker, you're a giver also, really?
Well, we all listen, we all know those people on social media that were like, all they do is talk about themselves all day, right? So you want to be your own hero, but not to the extent that you become the villain. So this is a way to sort of balance out your ability to actually shape your narrative and talk about the things that you're doing that are great, but at the same time, balance it and not even evenly balance it, right? 1 to 5 to make sure that you are spotlighting other people as well.
So it makes me think of, there's a guy that I follow on social media. You may like him, you may hate him. I'm not sure. His name is Dave Portnoy. Do you know who that is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now just give me your thoughts. You like him, or you don't really
I
care?
very much like him.
Okay, good deal. All right. So some people get on this podcast, they're like, oh, I hate that guy. But I like him. All right. And what he has done, and this is in regards to his personal brand, whether he realizes it or not, and I think he does because he's a super smart guy. But he shows his wins, like he loves it whenever he's winning with the teams and the people, the teams that he's betting on. But he also shows whenever he's losing, right? And it makes people fall in love with him even more, like, because he's funny that way, right? People want to see an individual who is, I guess you could say, humble enough to show when things aren't going well. And I believe what you just said is part of the approach that people need to take on social media. Don't quit just being the hero with all the wins. You need to show your losses and when things don't work out, because then that makes you relatable. And I think that people want to see that for them to buy into the story. Am I right?
So you're right. And one of the things, though, that I think is really important is when Dave shares those losses, he's not talking about losses of a core competency. So if you are an accountant and you're talking about how you really screwed up a budget or a spreadsheet, to me, while that may generate likes, that's not the right engagement for you to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So not to say that you need to be inauthentic, but you need to think about, like, is this a core competency of what I do? And if it is, why am I sharing it? Which is a filter I have in my brain all the time. Why am I sharing this? who are my stakeholders? Who out there is going to see this? And what do they mean for my future success? So, for example, if you're a founder and you have investors, or you're a corporate employee and you have a boss that's going to all of a sudden know that you messed up this thing, those are things to really consider. And I don't think people should confuse likes with success.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and you're right. Whenever his team loses, it doesn't affect him personally, his
No,
brand.
no.
It's some people are like, so he doesn't just win every time. All right, so I have the same type of journey then. That makes sense, right? So yeah, it doesn't hurt his competency level. That's a great way of looking at it. Never thought of it that way. Now,
But to your point, Mike, because I do think what you say is true also, like it is great if you can target a low risk share of a loss that doesn't affect a core competency or doesn't affect something important. By all means, it makes you more human for sure.
in your book, you have the 10 Commandments of Personal Branding. I don't know if you have the book in front of you, if you know
I
them off
don't.
by heart, but I can read some of them for you.
Go for
But,
it. Go for it.
I'm looking at this, and personal branding, extremely important to me. I realized, like you said, you got to make it easy as possible for others to communicate your message to their network, right? And I started to focus on that. I'm just a book guy, right? I was the business guy early on. Then I turned into the book guy. And it was an identity that I really want to own. And slowly but surely, I did have to own it. And I really looked forward to owning it. But it made it very easy. Oh, you're looking to write a book? Talk to Mike. Oh, you have a book done? Talk to Mike, right? So it made it easy for me to build my network because I made it easy on them to just share what I did. And I'm looking at this list and I want to read off some of them. It's going to be very relevant for anybody who's looking to start or grow a business. So analyze your brand's current state and focus on what you want to be known for, right? It's the target. It's the identity you want to be known for, the legacy, the impact, or how you want to be remembered when you're gone. Maybe that's the best way to ask it. So number 2, lay your foundation with a website, an all-star LinkedIn page, and a compelling bio. Number 3, nail your elevator pitch, tell your story, and communicate your wins strategically. Number 4, elevate or establish your brand at work, earn social capital, and cultivate authentic relationships. Number 5, become a captivating speaker and presenter. Wow. Like you said, repetition is your reputation. And I think this is something you need to do over and over and over. You become smoother at it, you become more refined, and you become more of the expert. Number 6, craft a social media strategy and build an online presence. It's easy to manage or put in there. Number 7, manage your reputation, learn PR 101, and survive cancel culture. Yeah, all righty. Okay, now we're, talking about some things that maybe are taboo. Yeah, you need to survive cancel culture because it's real, no doubt about it. And when you own your personality, like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, your personality creates your personal reality. You might bounce up against that cancel culture and you can't be afraid of it. Number 8, establish your signature look and visual identity. I love that. Number 9, understand your value and negotiate what you're worth. Very good. I had a tough time with raising my prices early on, and it did serve me very well. So it allowed me to grow my team, get higher level clients. So that's a really, really big one. Number 10, last one here: overcome imposter syndrome, step into your power, and rebrand yourself. I don't know if there's 1, 2, or 3 that really stand out that are significant you want to highlight, but my God, what a great top 10.
Well, thank you for reading it because I certainly didn't memorize it at this point. I think, one of the things that I think is important to note about that list, the way that I wrote on brand was equally for people who were like, I'm not doing social media. I don't care. It's not for me. And people who are like, I want to build my brand on social media. The one non-negotiable is LinkedIn as a professional person. But I think really all of those things come down to understanding who you are as a person and what that North Star goal is. And everything you're doing, no matter what medium you're on, should be working toward that North Star. And it doesn't mean you have to have like a 5-year plan. I've never had a 5-year plan. But when we say, like, what do you want to be known for? If you want to be known as the book guy, the $1 million book guy, well, you sure as hell better be repeating that over and over again, which you do. And then it starts to resonate and sink into people's brains because you have made it so. It's not by accident. You've done that. So you have done what I suggest in my book for yourself, which is yay for Mike. But other
Yeah, can
people,
you please can you keep just like saying I'm doing great work? I
you're
really,
doing great work. You're doing great work. But part of, in on brand, I have, those workbook pages, right? Every single section has mental gymnastics exercises where you can write in the book. Although I've learned the hard way, people really don't like to write in hardcover, but now that paperback's out, apparently it's easier. But the whole point is, I can't give you your personal brand. You have to do these reflective exercises and think it through. And I can hold your hand along the way. But this is the kind of stuff you have to do the work to really dig into your purpose.
Yep. What do you think is the hardest one to adopt? I personally believe it's number 10, and maybe that, is the beginning of the fall, right? Overcoming imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is different from person to person, but the way I look at it is it's sort of like a flashlight on where you need to go. If this feels uncomfortable, I need to be here. And I believe it's a Carl Jung or maybe a Friedrich Nietzsche quote where that to which you want is where you least want to find it. And that to which you want most is where you least want to find it. And it's because if it's scary, it might be the pathway. And imposter syndrome is just shining a light on what you're not good at or where you don't have your calluses. And I think that some people can break through that based off of fear or based off of some type of energy, their motivation, whether it's revenge or justice or just a want to win. And some people struggle with it. So to me, it's number 10. What would you say in regards to the hardest to overcome for the average person?
I think really shaping the narrative and communicating it out across every single medium you're in. But I will give you number 10. And I will say that how I think about imposter syndrome is really simply a simple rule. If you're in the room, you belong there. And a lot of people waste time thinking, wait, how did I get here? Am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Do I belong here? Versus saying, wait, I'm in the room. Now I'm going to crush it, right?
Yeah.
That's really the mindset you have to have. And I always tell people to write 2 Post-its after reading this book. The first one is, if you're in the room, you belong there. And the second one is really simple, which is, why not me? Because that is a question you can never answer. It can be you. It's just you're the one who's saying it can't be you.
I would also like to highlight what you just said when it comes to social media. To me, I look at social media as a resume. I look at it as visual representation of transformation. And so people are always like, why do you keep posting every day? Well, you know what? Number one, I have to see it. I have to know when I'm posting. But the more I do it, the more I pay attention to what I say it, how I look. And it does tie into that quote, repetition creates your reputation. I love that. I'm going to use that so often going
Go
forward.
for it. Yeah,
But
but you're
but
right. You're right. And you know what? But it goes back to also, you have to repeat, but you have to do it in new and interesting ways. And when you are someone, everyone's uncomfortable in the beginning. I was never comfortable with video in the beginning. I was on social media very early. I was like, I am not doing video. Super uncomfortable.
really,
Until I started realizing that you're swimming against the stream if you're not doing video. And I, made myself comfortable just by doing. And people can only get comfortable by doing.
so does it all begin with knowing yourself? You talk about self-actualization when it comes to Maslow's hierarchy of values. That's people think that's the last piece. I mean, it's the last piece whenever it comes to needs because it's, I think, the hardest to obtain. But once you know yourself, you become, I don't know, maybe unstoppable, right? You can go wherever, you can be whoever you want. You're not limited by your social circle. So does it all start with knowing yourself and knowing where you want to go? And I guess me personally, when I look back on my pathway, it didn't really start off with me knowing the end goal. It kind of became clearer as I took those steps and became more refined. So, what would you say if somebody's reading this book or thinking about starting a personal brand? Really, the end all be all ingredient that you would give them first? Self awareness, or what else?
So, I mean, self awareness is key because these exercises are very self reflective. And, self-reflection needs to match public perception for you to have a strong personal brand, right? You can think of yourself one way, but if no one else sees you that way, it doesn't really matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say my strategy has always been leading with my passion and values. So I've also never really cared what anyone else is doing. Like, I don't look at competitors. I don't think about other people who are in my space. I have always, even when I was that character, DQ PR girl, and I was a leader, I never followed other brands. I didn't want to know what they were doing. I stay really laser focused on what I feel in my gut and how I want to behave and what I want to do and what feels exciting to me. And it always goes back to like, what would you do for free? Like, a lot of this stuff we're so passionate about, we would do it for free.
Great
Like,
point.
having a podcast, you're pretty much doing it for free. I mean, I know I am. So I mean, it's like, what is really driving you? Even writing a book. Writing a book, you have to really want to get the words out. It is
Mhm.
not necessarily going to be this like making you a millionaire, but it is so important for you to say what you have to say. And that comes from a real gut feeling of kind of what you want to put out into the world and possibly give back to the world.
Yeah, Joe Rogan didn't make any money with his podcast. It was actually an expense for 5 years. Think about that. Five
Yes.
years of
I'm
doing it.
I'm I'm in that boat, but I am no Joe Rogan. So I started in 2019. So you have to love it. You really do. Whatever you're doing, I think.
Yeah, and I think that your reputation, and your brand, I guess you can really classify it as one and the same, but it does have to be in relation to the commitment level. If you do a podcast once every 3 or 4 months, are you really committed? The
No.
average person out there has a podcast that I think dies before 21 episodes. And so if you do podcasts consistently, you put out books, you're speaking on stage, you're showing up on social media, aren't you making it easier for the world to just trust you that you're going to be here next week, next month, that you're not going to close up shop and disappear? I've
Yeah.
always given the story that maybe there's that store that, you drive by every day, right? But one day it's not there. You're automatically going to say, well, I guess they're done. Let me just go somewhere else, right? And so it's that type of mentality. You need to be in the business, doing it, showing that you're committed for the lifelong journey that's required. It could be a 20-year project, but you're not going to just do this and then 3 weeks later it's going to be a success. So I think you need to show that, and it's your job, your moral obligation to show that you're in it for the long haul. Am I right? Is that part of personal branding?
I think it is. And I think it's also, a sign of committing to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And
you have to believe in what you're doing.
yeah, I guess is that it? Another piece of it that they just don't believe that they are the ones that can actually withstand it, or they have to see that return on investment. Maybe that's another part of the personal branding. Hey, I need to dress this way, do certain things, and if I don't see any type of return on investment financially, I'm going to give up in a month. I think that's another part of it where it's not quick enough. But I believe that's a test. I'm a spiritual guy that I look at everything as a test. And sometimes you have to do certain things for an extended amount of time, fight through the storms, and then and only then will you be blessed. What do you say about that?
So I think from a marketing mix perspective, I never believe in one silver bullet, right? I believe that all of these mediums cross pollinate and support each other. So maybe you're not going to make money on your podcast, but maybe someone's going to think you're really good at interviewing and is going to hire you to moderate, a big conversation on a stage that's filled with an audience of other CEOs who are then going to hire you for a consulting gig, right? It doesn't always have to be this linear click to buy result. So I think it's about having a lot of levers in play and having them feed each other.
Yes.
So
Yes.
book, podcast, newsletter, whatever mix you want.
And you've worked with some big brands, worked with entrepreneurs. I believe that there's a checklist that everybody has in mind before they hand over a resource, their time or their money. And that checklist, and I think is really, really crucial for people to understand that it has to do with longevity in the business, who they surround themselves with, what's their lifestyle look. Do I believe in the core values that they present? Do they sound like a professional? Are they
Mhm.
reading the same books? That checklist to me is crucial. And that personal brand has to shine through that maybe there's something that is attractive about that person. So, attractive story selling is one of my books that I wrote. And what you're doing is inviting people into your life. And I think with a strong personal brand, you become a magnet. And I think it's Jordan Peterson that says life is a series of games. And if your goal is to win lots of games, you need to be invited to play lots of games. A strong personal brand is like a strong magnet that brings people and opportunities in, and it invites them into your world rather than you have to chase. So you attract rather than chase. And that's going to make your life easier. And if you do it for 10 years, the second 10 years should be a lot easier than the first.
I mean, I could not agree more. And every single thing you said. But the other thing that's really important about a personal brand is the idea, and I think you touched on it in a different way, of this social capital, which you touched upon in my list of 10 commandments, which is social capital is not about social media. Earning social capital is about people understanding, oh, wait, he's good to work with. He delivers. He does great work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you become a go-to resource. And once you earn that social capital, people will come back to you over and over again because they know you can deliver what you say you will. And then that swells up for more opportunities.
Yes. Yeah. And it's amazing how you can lose that reputation pretty fast.
Well, actually, it's funny. I wrote a piece for Harvard Business Review on earning social capital as a hybrid or remote employee, because actually being out of sight, out of mind is a great way to lose social capital. You have to be extremely proactive, even as a solopreneur, in this world of we're not necessarily in front of people. And it's really, really important to have a strategy around that, because otherwise you can become invisible.
Right. Right. So, the people that you've worked with, when you are referencing going invisible, do they hit a certain point and they don't want the limelight and they're trying to scale their business maybe a little bit too fast and step away? Like, for example, if I'm looking at, uh, let's just say Tesla or SpaceX. Personally, I look at Elon Musk and I'm like, oh, I like what he's putting out there. I'm interested in what they have going on simply because of the leader, and he's out there front and center. Now he's not building the cars, he's not the one screwing on the bolts on the ships, but the rocket ships, but he is the face of the company. And so, what you're saying when it comes to this personal brand, this is a lifelong journey. And number one, you should fall in love with doing it because you get to inspire and motivate others. But if you do it in a certain way, you really don't disappear, right?
Yes, and Elon Musk is actually an example in on brand because his personal brand is so much bigger than his company's brands. When you think about even just from a simple follower count, his personal brand, his Twitter follower, his X followers, I should say, versus SpaceX, for example,
Yeah.
he dwarfs it, dwarfs it. So that's the other thing, how your personal brand can actually drive your business or crush your business, right? I mean, he's obviously a polar. I mean, I really like him as well, but he's a polarizing person. So maybe someone wouldn't buy Tesla because they don't like him. Who knows, But I think it is such an essential ingredient. And listen, I mean, I don't think you can get away anymore in this day and age without thinking about your personal brand. And people, I don't know. I think it needs a new PR person because people always associate it with cringe. They're like, oh my God, that's so cringy. I don't have a personal brand. It's like, really? I actually think if you focus on it, you might have much greater success than you would if you don't. Because I think the people who become invisible, well, there's two ways to think about it. There are the people who have really big egos who maybe come from a more traditional place. Maybe they've been around for a while, and there's a hubris to it where they think, oh, I don't need to do that. Everyone knows who I am. Everyone knows me. And I think that is the part in my book where I say, don't let your personal brand get dusty. Because a
Mhm.
lot of people think just because they've been around for a long time, that is protection. But actually, it's a very high risk because the longer you've been doing what you do, the more expensive you are.
Oh,
And if you're
yeah.
not innovating in your space, you become antiquated.
Oh,
I know it's harsh. It's harsh.
yeah. Oh, this is great advice. Guys, hopefully you're taking notes when you're listening to this. But I was driving the other day and I was thinking about why do I like listening to Jerry Seinfeld on podcasts as compared to other comedians? I don't
Hmm.
think he's funnier than a lot of them, but he's a better storyteller. And I thought to myself, why is that? Why is he more interesting? And I boiled it down to he was able to do something really, really well at the highest level, which was create a TV show that I absolutely love. So I want maybe that's the reason why listen to him more is because he did something at the highest level and it's so incredible and it still like makes me laugh to this day. So when it comes to a personal brand, a lot of people think they want to become the jack of all trades, be everywhere, doing all kinds of different things. And maybe they are somewhat successful in all those areas, but I believe that you really magnify your personal brand if you win big in one area, right? It's that inch wide, mile deep philosophy. And so people can buy into that. And then you can start to sprinkle in stories that have nothing to do with that. But you really need to become known for one thing only, in my opinion. And then the opportunities branch out. And like you said, you can snowball that into other things. But the personal branding of one expertise, absolutely crucial. Would you agree or disagree on that?
I think you can have, if you visualize it in terms of a word cloud, you can have one expertise that's bigger than others. But in on brand, one of the first exercises is really the Venn diagram. And I do think that you can have certain areas that you're passionate about, that you're interested in, that you're skilled at, and really identifying that sweet middle of how they intersect, right? So I'm a fashion girl. I'm also a social media girl. I'm a career advice girl. I'm an author. I'm a mentor. Like there are a lot of things in my Venn diagram, but they all kind of work harmoniously together. But at the end of the day, marketing, branding is really my sweet spot and how that shows up in different mediums. But I think doing the exercises is what gives you the clarity because you can niche down into one thing. But even if I took you, like you can say, okay, you're the book guy, but you also understand social media. You also understand marketing. You understand storytelling. There's a lot of subsets to that. It's not
Hmm.
just publishing, right? That's not just the one thing. So I think doing the exercises actually opens your eyes to the possibility of like, you're not just a one note person. And also, by the way, like even from a social perspective, like you don't want to just talk about one thing over and over again. You
Right.
want to have, I think of social media as a dresser drawer in your bedroom, right? So what do you have in your dresser drawer? I have pajamas, I have some t-shirts, bras, underwear. I'm not going to have pots and pans. So if your social presence is a dresser, each of those drawers can be another theme of content, but they all kind of need to make sense together.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess the way I was looking at it is I get on podcasts and get on stages because I am the book guy. But that doesn't mean I need to just talk about books while I'm on that podcast or
Exactly.
that stage. We'll talk about dogs or, the journey itself as, the hero's journey, like storytelling 101. But yeah, what grants me the opportunity is being known for one specific area, and then we can branch out. And then people are like, oh, I know, like, and trust him. Therefore, I'm going to follow that individual on social media, subscribe to his newsletter, schedule a consultation, or hire that individual to do business with.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Excellent. But it all starts with what makes you you. Last piece on this, finding the unique qualities that really give you that strength. I'm an 80s guy. I love 80s movies. I love,
Me too. Well, I'm an 80s girl.
okay, so the Goonies, Never Say Die. I apply it to my first book. I apply it to now our apparel line. That's what makes me different, right? I'm not trying to be like everyone else. So can you highlight how significant that is for your personal brand? Quit trying to be someone you're not or someone that is successful. Own you and what really makes you you, and then just bring that to light. Am I right?
That's the best part of personal brand. No two people are the same. No one has your exact experience, your worldview, your point of view. your skills, your talents. So if you really go through on brand and do the work, you're going to walk away being like, I'm pretty awesome. And now now that I know that, I can leverage that to reach that North Star. So 100% agree.
So, outside of your own book, is the question we always ask our guests. Outside of your own book, is there one that you recommend to our audience that made you fall in love with branding and marketing?
Oh God, I wish I could tell you that I read other branding and marketing books. I feel like I lived it, because that's really where, almost 3 decades of brand, like luxury brand experience in communications, marketing, and later digital. That's what I'm applying to people. So I can't say that I read another marketing book, but I can say that I lived a marketing book just by being in those roles. But there's tons of great books out there. A lot of the experts in on brand, like Dory Clark that I mentioned before, from a communications perspective. Alexandra Carter, who has a book called Ask for More about negotiation. Like these kind of, my friend Lydia Fallat, who talks about confidence and power and how you really tap into that. All of those books add something valuable to your mindset.
Hmm. There's a book out there called The Wizard of Ads. It's such an unknown book, but it changed my life whenever it comes to how simple some books can be and be very effective. And it talked about how even Elvis was not that big. He was super talented, but he wasn't big until he hired Colonel Parker. Colonel Parker was the marketer, right? He's the one that came to him and said, we could do this. We could do this with you, the tassels. We can really have you own Vegas. And so a marketer combined with somebody who might be an operations expert, a doer, you have to have the marketing. And maybe it's the greatest marketer that always wins. Do you agree with that? Not the greatest product, but the greatest marketer.
Oh, well, of course I agree with that. But I also think, in even simple terms, it's about surrounding yourself with people who see a better version of you than you see for yourself. Like everyone needs someone to reflect back on them what they see. It's hard sometimes to do it for yourself. Like I spent years and years and years marketing fashion brands. To market myself is a whole different scenario, right? So I think what he did for Elvis is do that. He saw the talent and he reflected it back, and then tweaked it and twisted it and extrapolated it. And he didn't seem like such a great guy in that movie, but he did a great job. He did a great job.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole movie, but I heard bad things about him.
Yeah, he really pushed him to the edge for sure. But marketing wise, he was HBS.
And if anybody goes to your way, you're all over, by the way. You're easy to find. Anybody Googles Aliza Licht, easy to find on Instagram, TikTok, X, LinkedIn. But if they go to your website, what will they find there?
So my website is like choose your adventure. So it's really like, are you coming here for brand consulting? Are you coming here for personal branding consulting? I'm super easy. I do video calls on intro. You can book me for as little as 15 minutes. Are you coming here to book me to speak? So all the things. So it's very simple when you land on alizalek.com, what you need to do. And yes, I am all over the place, as you put it. I'm definitely all over the place. And of course, my podcast, Leave Your Mark, is for career advice. So it's really something that I, like you, enjoy doing. And it's something that actually people told me I couldn't do. Every production company told me that they wouldn't work with me when I first pitched it.
Wow.
That was how I first came up with why not me. It's like, I think I'm actually good at this. Why not me? So I Googled how to do it. And, almost 1.5 million downloads later.
Wow. That's who you're at right now. 1.5. That's crazy. I'm looking at your book, 470 reviews on Leave Your Mark, guys. Pick up her book if you can, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this. There's Leave Your Mark and On Brand. That's the newest one. That has 118 reviews. I know how hard those are to get. So really well done. But go to Aliza Licht, that's LICHT.com, and check out her podcast, Leave Your Mark. And Aliza, this has been so much fun. I'm sure we'll stay in touch because we share so much in common. So thank you so much for being here.
You're an amazing host, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate it. Remember, guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.